So hello there, and welcome back to another Nice Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, and that is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to your podcast, well, you can with this one at Night of the Movies on Spotify, and if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform too. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and leave me some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. Also, I should say, and people who've been following my channel recently will have a good guess as to what I'm about to say here, it is still the ongoing saga of hay fever. Yes, I've spoken about my problems with hay fever many times on this channel, and my problems with hay fever have continued. Although my hay fever isn't that bad today, I'm recording this in the morning right now, and that's often when my hay fever is at its worst. So if I'm sniffling throughout the podcast, I do apologise. If I'm a bit bummed up in this podcast, I do apologise. It's just the way it is, and you know, it's what hay fever does to you. So yeah, if anything goes wrong in this podcast, blame hay fever. But other than that, this should be a great and fun podcast to listen to and or watch. So let's get into it. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. So, if you hadn't guessed already, because I keep saying his name in front of the movie, this is the new Christopher Nolan film, and it is one of the most highly anticipated movies of 2023, and it's definitely been one of my most anticipated movies. I've been looking forward to this film for a very long while. And the thing is, I'm not the world's biggest Christopher Nolan fan. Like, I enjoy a lot of his movies. I don't think there's any one of his films which I don't really like even Tenet, which I'm not too big on, I still enjoyed watching in the cinema. But the thing is, though, I'm not the world's biggest Christopher Nolan fan, but when I saw the cast for this film, when I saw the trailers, I just got more and more excited. Like, the trailers for this film were fantastic, and every single time I saw it in the cinema, and by the way, I saw the trailer for this film about 1,000 times. Honestly, the amount of times I saw the trailer for the film is kind of crazy. Like, every single time I've gone to cinema over the past couple of months, I've seen the trailer for this film. It's, you know, usually when that happened, it's a bit insufferable. But actually, because the trailers were so good, I didn't really care. But I thought the trailers looked brilliant, and you get this huge cast with people like Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr. doing his first, well, I suppose Doolittle as well, but his first non-Marvel role in what feels like a long while. I don't really count Doolittle because that film was absolutely atrocious, but it's Robert Downey Jr. doing a non-Marvel role, which is always quite exciting, and loads of other famous people as well, just doing small parts. You've got likes of Kenneth Branagh in there, you have Matthew Modine in there, you also have Casey Affleck, you've got, I'm trying to think of something on the top of my head right now, Alden Ehrenreich, who many people might know as a young Han Solo from Solo Star Story, Rami Malek, and it goes on and on and on. Such a huge cast of the film, had so much going for it, and also you've got Christopher Nolan now working with Universal under this amazing deal. Like, if people don't know already, Christopher Nolan used to make all his movies with Warner Brothers for a long time, but then they screwed him over with this day-and-day release thing that they did in 2020, 2021, and he was not happy about that. And so he left his partnership with Warner Brothers, his long-time partnership with Warner Brothers, and he went over to Universal, and he got this amazing deal for them where basically Universal can't, it's something like this, I might get some of the details wrong, and apologies if I do, but Universal can't really release any other film, any of their other movies, 30 days before or 30 days after the release of Oppenheimer. Also, Nolan gets something like a $250 million budget for this movie, and he gets all the freedom he wants. It was something like that, the deal he got, and it's absolutely incredible. Read up on it if you haven't already. So, There's been so much going for this movie. I was really excited to see it. So excited, dead excited to see it. The trailers looked amazing. Even though I've seen the trailers about 1,000 times, they looked amazing. And yeah, one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And here's what I think of the film. And by the way, I'm not going to do a plot synopsis, much like Barbie. If you wanna, much like when I did my Barbie review, you know, if you want a plot synopsis of the film, go and look up elsewhere. But yeah, I'm not doing a plot synopsis. But here are my feelings on the film. So here are my feelings on Oppenheimer. This is the best film of the year so far. I was stunned by this movie. I was mesmerised by it. And it's so well written. The writing is so smart, and the filmmaking, the structuring is so smart. And at the same time, it's such an amazing experience watching the cinema. Like, I went to go and watch this in IMAX, but I don't usually do. I don't usually watch films in IMAX. I've got nothing against IMAX, I just don't have an IMAX cinema close to me. The last film I watched in IMAX was Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which granted was only a couple of weeks ago, but, you know, it felt like a good while since I'd seen a film in Oppenheimer, funnily enough. Probably because of the amount of stuff I've been doing in the past couple of weeks since watching the latest Mission Impossible. But watching Oppenheimer in IMAX, that's what I meant to say there, watching this film in IMAX was another experience in itself. I thought the experience of watching this film in IMAX far exceeded the experience of watching Mission Impossible in IMAX. And I loved watching the latest Mission Impossible IMAX, but this, I mean, the IMAX experience was crazy good. And the spectacle in this film is, I mean, it's on another level of spectacle that you see in cinema. The visual language, the visual filmmaking that you get is some of Nolan's best. And I think this is a huge step up from Christopher Nolan's last film, which was, of course, Tenet, which came out in 2020. And like I said before, I didn't dislike Tenet. You know, there's things I like in Tenet. But the thing is, you know, I saw Tenet twice in the cinema, and I always said to myself, I'll watch it one day again on DVD, and I've never felt like I want to watch it again on DVD, though, since I first saw it. I've never felt a need to re-watch it on DVD, but the thing is, though, I've only seen Oppenheimer once, and I can't wait to see it again. I mean, it's a complex film, there's a lot going on, it's quite a dense one, there's a lot of detail in there, but at the same time, that really didn't bother me because of the emotional impact it had. Like, Tenet was a complex film, and it didn't really give me emotional impact. So when I'm sitting there, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, yeah, this isn't really, you know, gelling me in the way I would have, the way I wanted it to. But then with Oppenheimer, the emotional impact that it left me just was, I mean, I was floored by this film. It was heart-wrenching to watch. And, I mean, that's one of the reasons I think it's such a huge step up from Tenet, and that's one of the reasons I think it's one of Christopher Nolan's best movies, because it has that emotional impact, which leaves you feeling devastated, which the best Christopher Nolan films do. In my opinion, the best Christopher Nolan films are the likes of Dunkirk, or The Prestige, or Batman Begins. I know many people prefer The Dark Knight over Batman Begins, and I understand why, but for me, Batman Begins is the best film in the Dark Knight trilogy, and the reason those films work so well, in my opinion, because they feel like very personal stories, but they also feel epic and grand, and they give you this fantastic emotional impact, and that's what I think the best Christopher Nolan films do. Memento does that as well, although I haven't seen Memento in a long time, but that is another Christopher Nolan film which gives you this strong and powerful emotional impact, something which you really don't expect. And that's why I think Oppenheimer is one of the best Christopher Nolan films, because, you know, I would lump it in the same ballpark as Inception as well. It's another amazing Christopher Nolan film, one of my best, although one of my favourite, you know, they're one of my favourite Christopher Nolan movies, because it does deliver that emotional impact, and yet the films feel personal, even though there's all this other stuff going on. It feels coherent, and it feels very moving at the same time. And I also think this is a bit of a deceiving blockbuster. Like, many people might have watched a trailer to the film and gone, oh, we're going to go and watch something on the same lines as, say, Inception or Interstellar. And although I think it is definitely a Christopher Nolan film, I don't think it's similar to those films I've just mentioned. Nor do I think it's similar to the Dark Knight trilogy. I think it's very much its own beast. It's an historical epic, and instead, I think what Christopher Nolan's done so well is in the trailers. I mean, he didn't make the trailers, but in the trailers, this film is presented as a big, epic Christopher Nolan film that's set in World War II. You know, that it looks similar. You know, looks like it could be in the same family, the same vein as Dunkirk, which is Christopher Nolan's last World War II movie. But instead, what he's done is made a character study on J. Robert Oppenheimer. I think that's what he's called. I apologize if I got that name wrong. Yeah, that's what it's called. I always keep downing myself in these reviews. But yeah, instead, he's made a character study on J. Robert Oppenheimer. And in doing so, it's, I think, a far better film than a film just about the atomic bomb and the creation of that. I mean, obviously the film goes into that, but it's more film about Robert Oppenheimer, J. Robert Oppenheimer, and that's why I think it works, because it's a character study. It's a deceiving blockbuster. People are going to go into this film expecting to see, you know, a Christopher Nolan film like, say, Tenet, like, say, Inception or the Dark Knight trilogy, but instead, it's not like that. I mean, it's got some similarities to those films, obviously, because it's Christopher Nolan, and you feel his stamp in all of his movies, even in these early films like Memento, which are much lower budget, but at the same time, this is more of a character study than I think any other Christopher Nolan movie, and that's another reason I loved it. I mean, it's deceiving, and it was not the film I expected to be, but I mean that in the best way possible. It was not the film I expected it to be, and I loved it for that. Also, it reminded me a bit of, I just forgot the name of it off the top of my head right now. It reminded me a bit of Oliver Stone's JFK. Like, I don't know how many people have seen that. It's currently on Disney Plus, and I would definitely recommend you watching this. I would definitely recommend you watch JFK if you enjoyed this film. And the thing is about JFK, it is also a historical film about a real life event, and I mean both events. You know, what you see in JFK, it's all about the assassination of JFK. That is very different to this film, obviously. But it reminded me a lot of JFK in the way it was structured, and the way it's constantly moving, but it never feels messy. It never feels incoherent. Everything, you feel like everything makes sense in this film. And in JFK, that film is 3 hours, but it grabs you it grabs you in the opening, and it never lets go. It grabs you in the opening, and it's constantly gripping, constantly riveting, and constantly fascinating film, and that's exactly how I felt about Oppenheimer. Both films, although different, are about 3 hours long and grab you in their opening moments and never let go. And at times they are quite dense movies. Both of those are, you know, JFK and Oppenheimer, both dense movies, but at the same time, it's delivered in such a way that it's constantly riveting and fascinating to watch, and so compelling, and you're sitting there completely flabbergasted by the filmmaking, the way the storytelling has been done, and I mean, it's just masterful. JFK is honestly one of the best movies I've seen in the past 5 years. I love that movie. I think it's the best Oliver Stone movie I've seen yet. Granted, I haven't seen all his movies, but I love that film so much, and I've seen it about 3 times, and I want to rewatch it again soon. And Oppenheimer was similar for me in the viewing experience, in the way it was structured, in the way that the story develops, and what you find out about the character of Oppenheimer. Well, he's not character, is he? But what you find out about Oppenheimer during this film. It's structured in a similar way, and it reminded me of JFK, not in a bad way whatsoever. And yeah, I loved it for that. And it's also, you know, it's similar to the best historical movies, with the likes of Dunkirk, which is another Christopher Nolan film, but also 1917 and Apollo 13 and 13 Lives. I know they're both Ron Howard movies there, and I know 13 Lives isn't really a historical film, but it's a film about a real event. It's like the best films about true stories, where you may know the outcome, but the way the film is made, and its structure, and its filmmaking, and, pardon me, the way it's written, makes you think that you don't know the outcome, you don't know where the story is going. And so, yeah, you may know the conclusion of the film, but this film makes you feel like you don't know the conclusion, if you get what I mean. And that's another reason I loved it. You know, I was sat there going, I don't know where this is going. I genuinely don't know where it's going. I mean, I know where it's going. I know the end result of the film, but I don't know how we're going to get there. That's what it feels like. And I think the best films based on true stories do that. And the performances are all... They are all incredible, as you may expect. Cillian Murphy, this is his best performance. I mean, I love Cillian Murphy, whether it's in Peaky Blinders, whether it's in A Quiet Place Part 2. His performance as Scarecrow in the Dark Knight trilogy is not in loads of those films, but I particularly remember him in Batman Begins, and he just steals every moment he's in, and he's great. And Inception as well, he's been in a lot of Christopher Nolan films, he's also in Dunkirk. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Cillian Murphy, and he's quickly become one of my favourite actors, and this film really emphasised that. This film really reinforced this whole idea that Cillian Murphy is an amazing actor, and what I love about the movie is how he plays Oppenheimer, how he does all the nuance in his performance, but how you also feel emotion and you feel the emotional impact through his performance and through the way he plays Oppenheimer. I don't think the emotional impact in this film would be as moving if it wasn't for Cillian Murphy's performance. He is on another level in this film, and if he doesn't get an Oscar nomination, I don't understand how the Academy Awards work. I genuinely don't. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is also he's insanely good in this film. I don't think I've seen Robert Downey Jr. this good. I think Robert Downey Jr. is an amazing actor, and I think many people just just go, oh, that's Iron Man, but then you watch him in this film and he's more than Iron Man. I mean, yeah, he's good as Iron Man and everything like that, but he's far more than just Iron Man, and this film really proves that. He's so... every single time he's on screen, you're just captivated by him. And that's the same with Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh, who give off quite nuanced performances, but again, are so captivating and so compelling to watch. I mean, this might be the best I've seen Emily Blunt, and Emily Blunt, again, an amazing actress, and, one of my favourite actors working today, but this might be her best performance. And Florence Pugh, she's not in loads of the film, but every single time Florence Pugh is on screen, you are drawn to her, and the way her character is used and intertwined into the story is, in my opinion, absolutely masterful. And Matt Damon is great in the film as well. Although, I will say, I do think Matt Damon, and this is weird to say because he's still really, really great in the movie, but I do think Matt Damon gives off the weakest performance, because I do think quite a few times he is chewing at scenery, and I don't know, I just think Matt Damon could have given more to do in terms of showing his nuance and showing like a different side to him. But I did still think Matt Damon gave a great performance, don't get me wrong, but I just think when you have him in scenes against Cillian Murphy, then there's a scene of Robert Downey Jr. playing off like 2 minutes later, you're kind of like, oh, he's not as good as, say, some of the other actors in the film, but he's still great. And, even some of the lesser players in the film, some of the other stars are in this movie who are not in this film as much as, say, Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., even some of the lesser players, like Kenneth Branagh, like Gary Oldman, like Alden Ehrenreich, Rami Malek, and Casey Affleck, and so on and so on and so on. Even some of the lesser players are also great and are so memorable in their scenes and mesmerising. There's only one scene with Gary Oldman, and I won't spoil when it comes into the film, but there's only one scene with Gary Oldman in this movie, and I hated that character because of the way Gary Oldman played him. It's only one scene, doesn't really last that long, but Gary Oldman is great in the film. So is Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh seems to really like working with Christopher Nolan, doesn't he? He worked with him in Dunkirk, and then he worked with him in Tenet, and now he's worked with him again here. And Casey Affleck isn't in much of the film, but he's great in there. So is Rami Malek. According to Robert Downey Jr., Rami Malek was only on set for one day, and yet he steals it when he comes into the film. And Jack Quaid, which many people might know from The Boys, and he was also in Scream 5. He's in this film, and, he's great in there. All the performances, even from lesser players, are great in this film. Alden Ehrenreich is brilliant. Such an underrated actor. And he doesn't seem to Robert Downey Jr. And Robert Downey Jr. is acting his socks off. But Alden Ehrenreich is still great. And yeah, all the performances, I mean, they really caught me off guard. And yeah, you're going to see some acting nominations for this film. I really think you will. And Cillian Murphy, I read this interview a couple of days ago from Cillian Murphy, who said that they shot the film in 57 days. If that's true, and I'm guessing it is, because Cillian Murphy is in almost every frame of this film, he is the lead of the film, he is J. Bob Oppenheimer, if that's true, that's incredible. I don't even know how they did that. That's a miracle. That is the definition of a miracle. They shot this film in 57 days. I mean, it's mind-blowing that. And the whole film is mind-blowing. It blew me away, and no pun intended there, because it's a really serious subject matter, but you watch it and you're enthralled by it, you're engrossed in what's going on. I didn't totally understand everything, but I was sat there going, wow, I'm just so riveted by it though. And, I mean, the musical score as well by Ludwig Göransson, I might pronounce his name wrong, and apologies if I am. I'm a big fan of Ludwig Göransson with his music for The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett, but also with his music for Black Panther 1 and 2, and his music for Creed 1 and 2. But I didn't love Ludwig Göransson's score for Tenet, because for me it didn't really have any, standout melodies, and it just felt a lot like noise. Like, don't get me wrong, all music is noise, I understand that, but I wanted it to have more themes that really stuck out for me. This score for Tenet just, I don't know, when I listened to it separately outside of the film, it didn't really work for me. But Ludwig Göransson's score for this film, his score for Oppenheimer, is magnificent. I mean, the film is magnificent anyway, but one of the reasons I do think the film is magnificent is because of Ludwig Göransson's score, which is pulsating throughout the film. I don't know if that's a word. I think it is. I've heard someone else use it before, so I'm going to guess it's a word. But it's constantly there throughout the movie, and it builds up tension. There's so many moments in such a fantastic way, but there's all these different sounds and all these different tempos and all these different instruments being used in the music, some electronic, some non-electronic instruments, some orchestral instruments being used in the score, and I think this is Ludwig Göransson's best score today. I love his music for Mandalorian, love his music for Creed 1 and 2, and loved his music for Black Panther 1 and 2 as well, but this is Ludwig Göransson's best score. I'm pretty happy to say that. And I love the sound design in the film as well. The way the sound is cut and is mixed. I mean, particularly in the scene when they test out the atomic bomb. I won't give away what happens, because I think you can only really experience that scene. That scene's really, me explaining it would not do it justice, but the way the sound is mixed in that scene, the sound design in the film overall, I think is pretty damn. I think it's amazing. I think it's pretty damn good, yeah. I think it's far better than the sound mixing in Tenet, where those moments in Tenet where I couldn't really understand what characters were saying. Like, I just couldn't hear them. It wasn't that, I didn't understand them. I couldn't hear what they were saying. There was a scene involving some sailing in Tenet, and by the way, I am dissing a lot on Tenet. Tenet is not a film I dislike, but I just had some problems with. But the thing is, I couldn't really understand what some characters were saying in Tenet. Yes, in this film, I thought the sound mixing, I know some people complain about it, but I don't really get that. I thought the sound mixing worked pretty damn well, and I do think this is noteworthy to mention, which is why I'm going to mention it. This is the first Christopher Nolan film which includes explicit sex scenes. Like, it does have some nudity in there, and that has been a bit controversial to some people, but going into the film, when I heard about that, I was like, okay, I'm going to see how it's used. I think the sex scenes make complete sense. I'm talking about them because Christopher Nolan's never really done that in his films before. I mean, I think there's been implied sex in his films. I think there has been in the past. I must admit, I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but this is the first time you see explicit sex scenes in a Christopher Nolan film, but I think they worked rather well. In fact, the second sex scene that you see in the movie is particularly really well done. I think it's particularly masterful because it's a scene which is meant to be exposing our main character and one of his relationships, one of his past affairs, should I say, and the way that second sex scene is done, yes, explicit, but I think the explicit nature of that second sex scene worked particularly well in exposing these characters, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say there. It worked particularly well in exposing what was going on and exposing Oppenheimer's personal life. That's where I'm going to leave that, and if you've seen the film, I think you'll know what I mean. And I mean, the whole film is one big, epic, amazing, and I mean, just incredible experience. It's an experience. You know, the best films are. I spoke about this last year with my views of Elvis and my views of what was another film which I really loved last year, 13 Lives. You know, I spoke about this last year with my views of those movies, where I said the reason I love these films is because they feel like experiences, and I haven't really felt that with any movie this year so far. I mean, Mission Impossible to a degree, sure, but I did have a couple of small problems with that film. And the thing is, though, no movie this year, not really. I mean, Rye Lane, to a degree, again, I loved Rye Lane, probably my second favourite from the year so far. But the thing is, as I've been saying, no film this year has really felt like an experience to me yet. Yet this film did. This film felt like an experience. It was a kite study. It was a bit deceiving because it was not the blockbuster I was expecting it to be. But at the same time, though, it is a blockbuster. It's an event movie. You've heard about the box office of the film. People are going crazy. I mean, I wanted to go and see it at the cinema, and I almost didn't get seats. You know, there's 3 seats left in the cinema, and I was going with me and 2 of my mates. So we were really lucky to get those last 3 seats, and they were quite close to the screen. And at times, you know, there's 2 times in the film where I just looked around the screen because I was sat in a place where I could look around the majority of the audience. And I don't think I've ever seen... First of all, I don't think I've ever seen a cinema as packed as I did with the cinema that I watched Oppenheimer in. And at the same time, I don't think I've seen as many people engaged in a movie, especially a 3-hour movie at that, as I had with my screening of Oppenheimer. Because I've been to films in the past which are about 3 hours long or even less, and people have been going on their phones in the cinema. I'm like, what the hell are you doing that? Or why the hell are you doing that? Or people have been talking, nattering away during the film, but no one was talking in my screening of Oppenheimer. No one was on their phone, and everyone was so engaged in the film. I mean, I was as well, and I couldn't believe how captivating, compelling, and engaging I found it, and how much of an experience it was. It was an experience that I really loved, but also I loved how it was a character study, and it wasn't the blockbuster I expected it to be, and yet it delivered on what I wanted it to do. You know, if you hadn't grasped this already, I love this movie. I love this film. And, you know, it's not my favourite Christopher Nolan film. I will say that. It's not my favourite Christopher Nolan film. My favourite Christopher Nolan film might still be Batman Begins or The Prestige. Both those films I love quite a lot. But I do think, you know what? I might say it's my 3rd favourite Christopher Nolan film. Yeah, I'd probably say it's behind The Prestige. I mean, give it a rewatch, and I might even like this over The Prestige. There's definitely parts of me which I prefer over The Prestige, but I do prefer The Prestige a little bit more because it was very different than other Christopher Nolan films I've seen. And, you know, things about The Prestige, it tells you in its opening half an hour, you know, what's going to happen in the rest of the movie, and it does that, and yet you still don't think it's going to do that, and it delivers this really fantastic ending. I won't go into detail in case people haven't seen The Prestige, but I particularly love that movie. And I haven't seen all of Christopher Nolan films. I haven't seen his first film, The Following. Neither have I seen Insomnia, which I know a lot of people love. But all the Christopher Nolan films I have seen, whether it's Memento, Inception, Interstellar. Granted, I haven't seen Interstellar for a very long time, but I've still seen it. Dunkirk, Tenet, and the Dark Knight trilogy. You know, whereas any of those movies, I prefer this movie over all the ones I just mentioned. I don't prefer it over Prestige and Batman Begins, but I prefer it over Dark Knight Rises. I prefer it over Inception. I prefer it over Interstellar, and I prefer it over Dunkirk and Tenet. And, you know, that's saying a lot because I think Inception is pretty damn amazing. I think Dunkirk is one of the best war movies ever made, and I think that The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises are fantastic films. but I think this one is better because it's mesmerising. You don't really want to take your eyes off the screen when you're watching. Right, so this is an add-on, and I'm really annoyed I forgot to mention this because I even put it in the title of this podcast, and I put it down in my notes, and I just didn't see it in my notes when I was doing my podcast earlier today. So this is an add-on. I'm recording this after I did my podcast on Oppenheimer, but I'm putting it in my podcast right now just so I get it in there. This is a harrowing film. It is scary. It is a horror movie. There were moments where I was terrified, and moments I was sitting there shook, completely shook. And just after watching the film, I went to go and get something to eat at Five Guys, which was near the cinema I was watching. It was Five Guys restaurant, and I was sat in Five Guys eating some chips, and I was just thinking about the film. I was like, how shocking and devastating the whole film was. It is a horror movie. It is a real horror film. Yeah, it's harrowing and it's terrifying at times, and that's another reason it worked for me on another level, because just how scary it really was. But anyway, back to the podcast. It's so well edited and so well structured. It's got this non-linear structure, which is one thing I've really talked about. It's got this non-linear structure where, it's not structured chronologically. The film isn't done chronologically. The storytelling isn't chronological, is what I'm saying. It isn't in order of event. It's got a non-linear structure, and I think that made it more engrossing to watch and more enthralling to watch. And the whole film, I mean, it was an experience, and that's why I really loved it. That's why I loved it more than anything. It was an experience with a masterful direction, with editing which is so on point, and with performances which are so compelling and are so great, and with with spectacle that it is just on another level, with sound design that is so on point, and with a musical score that just fits perfectly with the film. And I mean, the film is shot beautifully, and yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, and I have been already, but you get the point. I absolutely love this movie, and I can't recommend it enough if you haven't checked it out already. I would definitely check it out, and if you get the chance, watch it in IMAX, watch it in the biggest screen possible, because it's really something to behold. And yes, it's about 3 hours long. Yes, that's even the one time. It's 3 hours and 9 seconds long. I heard Nolan say it in an interview recently. It's 3 hours and 9 seconds long, and you do feel the length of the movie. At least I did. But I wouldn't cut a single second off this film, because it's got this breakneck pace which keeps you engaged, which constantly keeps you engaged. And even when you think the film is coming to an end, something else is thrown in. Another layer of story, another layer of tension is thrown in, and you are even more engaged than you were before. I mean, yeah, absolutely loved it, and it's my favourite film of the year so far, with Riley in a close second, and with Mission Impossible somewhere in between all that, and obviously Spider-Verse as well. But, it's my favourite film of the year so far, and I'm just so happy it worked for me. I'm so happy this film delivered, because I was a bit wary that it wouldn't, but yeah, I was flabbergasted by this film. It really shook me. I was thinking about it for about an hour after I saw it, and I couldn't quite get it out of my head, and I still really haven't. I still haven't got it out of my head. Can't wait to rewatch it, and yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's mesmerising, it's so well written, and it's deceiving. It may not be the blockbuster you expect, but that's one of the reasons I love this film even more. That's another reason I love this film as much as I do. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Oppenheimer, I'm going to say that it's a 9.5 out of 10. Now, I haven't given it a 10 out of 10 because I have one problem with this film, but I'm not going to discuss it in this review, because it's a problem that I also have with Barbie, and I didn't discuss it in my Barbie review, But the thing is, it's not really to do with the film, but it sort of is at the same time. It's to do with the cast. That's all I'm going to say. It's to do with the film's cast. So I'm not going to get into too much detail on it now, but it's something to do with the film's cast. But other than that, I think this is a near perfect film. I generally do. This is a breathtaking cinematic achievement, in my opinion. I know some people have had problems with, some of the emotional impact of the film. They didn't find it nearly as emotionally impactful as, say, Dunkirk or Inception or, what's the other one that I found really emotionally impactful? Interstellar. A lot of people find that emotionally impactful, particularly in the scene with Matthew McConaughey crying, but I did find it emotionally impactful though, particularly as I've already mentioned through Cillian Murphy performance. That's one of the reasons I think this film works really well as well, because I think the best Christopher Nolan films are one which leave you with that really, which leave you devastated, which leave you feeling emotionally worn out, which make you feel like your heart has been literally whipped out of your body. That's what this film feels like. That's what I felt like at the end of The Prestige. That's what I felt like. I mean, I don't know if I felt like that at the end of Batman Begins, but the thing is, the reason I love Batman Begins so much is because that was the first Christopher Nolan film I saw, and it really showed me what the power of him could be like as a filmmaker. And that film does have some emotionally impactful moments, but for me, more than anything, that's probably the most entertaining Christopher Nolan film. And I will say, this is a devastating movie. You leave this film feeling like your heart has been literally broken into pieces. And I didn't, and so for me, if I get the choice, I would rewatch Batman Begins just because it's more of a fun watch. I can watch Batman Begins and go, oh, it's still a Batman movie, it's still fun to watch, and it's got that popcorn entertainment value, which you don't necessarily get with Oppenheimer because it's a true story and it's emotionally affecting story. So that's one of the reasons I prefer Batman Begins over this movie. But that's not to, take any value away from this film now, because I absolutely love it. And it works so well, really, because it's a character study blockbuster about the father of the atomic bomb and his political associations and his personal life, and how this mind-blowing creation that he crafted destroyed him. How his own creation destroyed him. And you really feel that, though. The story got me, and the whole film just really caught me off guard. I went into this thinking it was going to be a good movie. I came out of this film going, that was an amazing film. That was absolutely incredible. And it's my favourite from the year so far. And it's going to take a lot to top it. It really will, because it was more than anything an experience. And that is something which really bumped it up on another level for me, because that's why I go to the cinema. This film reminded me of why I go to the cinema, because of its visual language, its visual storytelling, and its spectacle, and also the way the film is written, though. And I could go on and on, and I have already, but you get the point. I love this movie more than anything because it's an experience. It's an experience on another level that I just think you have to watch in IMAX, or at least the biggest screen you can find, or just watch in the cinema, you know what I mean? Because I do not think you'll be disappointed with it. It's not for everybody, as every film is, but I really was caught off guard by how much I like this film. Because I'm not the biggest Christopher Nolan fan, as I already said. I'm not the biggest Christopher Nolan fan, but this movie, I think, was near perfect. I really do. And it's emotionally impactful. It's a deceiving blockbuster. It might be the blockbuster you expect it to be. It's not The Dark Knight, but I like it because of that. And I love it because of that. And it's so cleverly written. And it's so emotionally engaging and investing. You get invested into everything that's going on. And it's just absolutely... It's absolutely amazing. It really is. And I absolutely love it. And so, as I've already said, I'm going to say that Oppenheimer is a 9 out of 10 from me. Anyway, Anyway, guys, that is it for today's podcast. Hopefully, you enjoyed this podcast, and if you have seen Oppenheimer, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you didn't really like it too much, and if you didn't, that's totally fair and it's totally fine. Let me know your thoughts on the film in the comment section below, whether you loved it or hated it, because it's always great to hear diversity of thoughts, especially on a movie that I think, especially on a movie that I like a lot, you know what I mean? So yeah, let me know your thoughts on Oppenheimer, whether you loved it or hated it, in the comment section below. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. Look forward to many more podcasts coming very soon on this channel. Thank you as always for watching or listening, and I suppose that's it. So I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.